Okay, in this video, I'm going to go through the electronic homework in My Open Math for question 8 for hypothesis testing. So we have past studies have indicated that the percentage of smokers was estimated to be about 35%. Given the new smoking cessation programs that have been implemented, you now believe that the percentage of smokers has reduced. You randomly surveyed 2,416 people and found that 787 smoke. Use a 0.05 significance level to test the claim that the percentage of smokers has reduced. So first thing is we usually have our p-values in or percentages converted to decimals, so 35%. You could put it as 0.35 when we're working with the formulas. You'll need to do that. So that's one thing to think about before you go through the questions. And then also think about what your sample that you just got, your what that's coming out to be. You're seeing 787 divided by 2,416, and clearly that is less. Once you crunch those numbers up, you'll see that they're less than 35%. So we'll need to use that number as well. So we need both of those values. And we need to pay attention to significance level. So the first thing is to identify the null and alternative hypothesis. So null is what is currently happening, what's given in the problem, and you can look up here and find that's 0.35. So they're saying it's equal to that or higher, but we usually the methods that we've been using always put just equals for that, the null, and then the alternative will contain either an equal or inequality. So think of the null is the status quo, whatever the current situation is. And then the alternative, we call that H sub 1, and that is P less than 0.35. And that's from the sample survey. So now we need to think about what hypothesis test should be conducted, left, right, or two-tailed. Since it's a less than, it's a one-tail, and it's to the left, so we're looking at a lower value. So that would be left-tailed. The next part is identify the appropriate significance level, and that is given in the problem. If we look back up here, we can see that it's 0.05, or if we move two places right, we could think of it as 5%. And we refer to that as alpha. So alpha equals 0.05. So we'll need to use that later when we find our p-value. We're going to figure out like how that compares. So the p-value is the likelihood, where the other p that we're using is the proportion or percentage of people. So here we need to look at part D, the test statistics. We're going to use p hat rounded to 4 decimal places in the formula. Write the result below and round your test statistic to 4 decimal places. Now, depending on how My Open Math takes it or whatever, the rounding can be a little off, so do make sure you let me know if that's marking you down and I can go in and override it. I found mine to be just a teensy bit off, and Staplet gave it a little bit off. So first I'm going to show you by hand, but you can also do it in Staplet. You can find the test Z. So our n value we get from that beginning part of the question back up here, that we surveyed 2,416 people. So that's our n. So you want to, track that down. And then here's some formulas to use. The mean that we're going to use is the proportion that we're given, the 0.35. And then the standard deviation we would find from taking the square root. Don't forget to take the square root. It's kind of easy not to do that, like to just do the middle part. So we're going to take that p sub 0 times q sub 0, which is just 1 minus the p, and divide that by n, and then take the square root. So I have a feeling that sometimes people just forget to do the square root. I've done that. It's pretty easy to do. So one thing we have to do is figure out our pieces here to use our formulas. So another formula we need for the test z is the p hat minus p sub 0, all divided by this standard deviation, which is that square root of p sub 0 times q sub 0 over n. And to do that, we first have to calculate out what p hat is. So just take your proportion that from the sample, 787 divided by 2,416, we get 0.3257. I'm just using rounding to 4 decimal places. And then I go ahead and put all those values in. So I have my p sub 0 is 0.35. My standard deviation is 0.0097. Again, make sure you take that square root of the inside part. Then I go ahead and figure out my test z. I can show you what I did in Desmos, all my calculations here. So this was how I set it up. I use the square root key here and the fraction key a lot on the little tablet, so that helps a lot. And Desmos Scientific Calculator is really nice because you can copy paste things, so you can get them into the right format and then just reuse your formulas and things too. So just this might be helpful rather than doing it on a regular calculator. It's nice to see it all laid out in this format. So just take a look at that and see how the numbers match up. So my test statistic came out a little bit different than my Open Math had it, but it is precisely the same as what Staplet had. So now I'm going to go back to this page. But I think one of the common mistakes, like I said, finding the standard deviation, sometimes people forget to take the square root of the inside. But the other thing they tend to do is use the p hat in the numerator, the p hat times, I guess you would say, q hat, or 1 minus p hat. But that's not what it is. You're going to use what your given information from the null, that 0.35 times 0.65, but it is confusing because the n is taken from the sample, but not the p. Okay, we take that into account down here in the test z. So I have a feeling that that might be a common thing students tend to do. I've seen that. So just make a note of that. And then once we get that information, that was just to answer one of the questions. Like I said, you could just kind of move on and do it all in Staplet and not do it by hand, and then go back and answer that question in my Open Math. But we do need all this information up here, or some of it anyway, to answer the p-value for part E. So we're going to use Staplet's normal distribution. We enter plot distribution, then calculate the area to the left of the value, So that value is our p hat, 0.3257. Then I hit calculate area. We'll get the p value, and I'll show you how to do all this here in Staplet. And then we convert to decimal. You can leave it as a percent and just compare to 5% if you want as well. But here I'll show you in Staplet how I set it up. So just a little refresher here, we would want to, from the main menu, go to normal distribution, okay, and then you would put in the mean, which we're using 0.35. Standard deviation was from here, the 0.0097. So we need to have that, 0.0097. Then we do our plot distribution. So if you had your standard deviation wrong, that would throw everything off. And then I want a left tail, so left to the value, and the value was 0.32 something. I'm going to look over here. 57. 3257. And then I'm going to calculate area. And I can see my test Z right there too. Make this a little bigger. Z equals negative 2.50515. You can put that in for the previous question if you want, if you don't want to do the Z by hand, but it's pretty quick. And then this right here, once I hit that calculate area, that's my p-value, 0.61%, not this Z, okay? So you have to either compare 0.61% to 5% or convert to decimal, 0.0061 compared to your alpha, 0.05. Usually significance levels, we use decimals, the decimal version. And you can see that's a small tail. So there's the directions for that, and then compare. So we got 0.61% or 0.0061, and you would enter that in for question or part E of question 8 in my open math. And then do we reject the null? Choose one of the options below. Now, if we look at that and compare, is it small or is it big or not small? Yeah, I guess. It is small. It's smaller than our significance. So that's what I just wrote out here. So we want to, we would reject the null for that. And so this is the answer. That's the first one. Okay. And then what conclusion can we make? So if we're rejecting the null, then there's actually sufficient evidence to support the claim that the percentage of smokers is less than 35%. Okay. So we're gonna, you would enter or click that dot in my open math. And that's it for question 8. I'll do another one in a separate video. Have a great day.